Sponsored by NordVPN. Android on your laptop? It's more likely than you might think. Google is merging Chrome OS into Android, and it's already confirmed that Android-powered laptops are on the way. If you believe Qualcomm's CEO, they're going to be incredible.
By the way, I've seen it. It's incredible.
And he can't wait to have one.
I can't wait to have one.
But as someone who's followed the trials and tribulations of Google hardware over the past 15 years, I have several questions. See, Google has a well-earned reputation for making big platform plays and then brutally discontinuing them at relatively short notice. The Google graveyard is occupied by more of these computational cadavers than you may think. Chromecast, Nexus Q, Google Glass, Daydream VR, OnHub, Jamboard, Pixelbook, Project Ara, Project Tango, the original Android Wear, Google. So that's the biggest fear, right? That Google will half-arse a launch of Android for PCs, it won't immediately catch on, and then Google will turn around and basically be like, and meanwhile, the Pixelbook Pro Max 5G you just blew a couple $1,000s on spends the rest of the 2020s slowly turning into a pumpkin. That's the worst case scenario, but on the other hand, Google does have an opportunity here thanks to a perfect storm of technology and ecosystem to make this new category a success. But do I think Google has what it takes? Let's jump in. Android on PCs is not a new thing. Whether you remember the old Motorola Atrix clamshell shell or wacky 2010s efforts like the Asus Transformer, every so often someone will try and shoehorn this mobile OS onto something vaguely shaped like a laptop computer. But mostly they ran the same underpowered chips, by PC standards anyway, as Android phones and tablets, based on ARM architecture. In the early days especially, this really limited what you could do. Or alternatively, some wackier models did run Intel x86 chips, but because they were Android, had all the compatibility disadvantages and jank of that OS, plus the inferior battery life of x86. But finally, in the mid-2020s, the hardware has caught up. Apple moved its MacBooks over to the ARM-based Apple Silicon in 2020, and Qualcomm turned heads and blew minds with the original Snapdragon X Elite in 2024. Now, of course, we have Snapdragon X2 promising 31% quicker performance and 43% efficiency gains over what was already a stupidly fast and efficient chip. Full-fat Windows 11 is already running on modern ARM chips like the Snapdragon X Elite. It's a proven SoC. And so Android laptops launching with the next-gen X2 should be able to deliver power on the same scale as Apple's M4 or even M5. With this performance and efficiency, the perfect hardware for an Android laptop could finally be here. As for Android itself, it's had reasonable tablet support since around 2011 and has slowly been growing various windowed app features since then, especially on Samsung devices with its excellent DeX mode for tablets and even phones when you're using an external display. In the past, using Android on a big screen meant being tied to a clunky interface that didn't feel at home on anything larger than a phone, with limited productivity outside of some basic Office apps. But look at the current Samsung DeX for a great example of what can be achieved through Android in this kind of form factor. All the recognizable parts of a modern desktop OS are there. Multitasking is fantastic. It doesn't feel nerfed like some Android tablet interfaces do. Even the desktop mode in stock Android on the Google Pixel, when it's enabled in developer options and plugged into an external display, is surprisingly robust. It benefits from many of the big screen features added from Android 12L through Android 14 for bigger screens, like native taskbar support and windowing APIs. Plus, remember, this isn't just Android as we know it coming to PCs. Google is merging Chrome OS's codebase into its mobile OS, which is likely to plug many of the technical gaps. Think things like verified boot and seamless system updates, and stronger multi-user and enterprise support. So you have the two OSs coming together for a stronger underlying foundation. However secure your operating system is though, it's no good if that security ends at your Ethernet port or Wi-Fi antenna. And that's where this video's sponsor comes in, NordVPN. NordVPN is the best VPN service for online security, and now you can get up to 77% off a 2-year plan plus 4 months for free. Nord is one of the fastest VPNs in the world, with speeds of up to 6,700 megabits per second. It adds an extra layer of protection to your daily internet use by encrypting your traffic, shielding your online activity from hackers and snoopers, especially useful if you travel or use public Wi-Fi a lot. and you can appear as if you're virtually anywhere in the world with servers in over 126 locations. NordVPN also comes with an integrated anti-malware tool and continuous dark web monitoring, so you should know about any leaked credentials before the bad guys do. A single plan covers 10 devices with all major platforms supported, so head to nordvpn.com/xda to get up to 77% off a 2-year plan plus 4 months for free. Thanks to Nord for sponsoring, now back to the video. You might not imagine gaming as an obvious advantage for an Android laptop, but think about it compared to the competition. Most full-blown x86 gaming laptops are big, heavy, and pack battery life measured in minutes if you're actually using them to play. Windows on Snapdragon right now has to rely on emulation for playing most games, so you're always a step behind the curve. And there are very few titles that run natively on ARM. As great as Windows 11's Prism compatibility layer is, demanding titles will often run slowly if they even run at all. Meanwhile, Mac gaming is still something of an afterthought, despite some high-profile ports and improving third-party emulation options. But Android on laptops will benefit from native support for the entire library pretty much of Android games that you'll know from your phone or tablet, as opposed to just the subset that you get for Google Play games on a Windows PC. Google is actively courting PC game developers right now, promising new porting tools while also improving support for the Vulkan Graphics API in Android. And that's before you get to the possibilities around Proton, the compatibility layer built by Valve to play Windows games on Linux-based platforms. That's at the heart of SteamOS handhelds. So between all of these factors, gaming on Android laptops could be a bigger draw than you might think. At a technical level, merging the Android and Chrome OS codebases just makes sense, and it's kind of surprising Google has made it all the way to 2025 with these two mostly separate but overlapping platforms. Android and Chrome OS share the same Linux kernel and driver foundation, so merging them means less duplication of engineering work in future. Android's graphics pipeline is more than up to the task of powering high-resolution external displays even at high refresh rates, including demanding ray-traced games. And Android's power management prowess, forged through countless generations of phones and tablets, should help future Pixel and Android notebooks deliver the kind of battery life that the likes of Windows can still struggle to attain. And security-wise, the new Android for desktop would benefit from current Android's SE Linux permissions and Chrome OS's isolation layers. Android's AB update system, where you have 2 system partitions for quicker updates with less downtime, would be ideal for a desktop PC. Plus, it just makes sense ecosystem-wise. A proper first-class desktop OS is what's missing from Google's lineup. They already have phones, watches, tablets, earbuds, Wi-Fi routers, home security gear, streaming boxes, and more. The current Chrome OS only goes so far, so a full desktop offering based on Android is a natural next step. Android for desktop will inherit the entire Android app library, and that's both a blessing and a curse. If you've used Android apps on a tablet or even a foldable, you'll know there are still way too many examples of janky, unpolished applications that revert back to a phone experience, even on a big screen. That has improved somewhat in recent years, and for foldables in particular, now the Play Store does a much better job of surfacing fold-friendly options, and I would expect Google to do the same for desktop Android when that arrives. But bringing Android to laptops will undoubtedly involve more app-based friction than any of the existing OSs. Even Windows on ARM, thanks to the Prism compatibility layer, covers most of your everyday productivity apps. Even Adobe apps work really well on an X Elite as of fall 2025. With Android, you're starting basically from scratch in a lot of areas, and early adopters could well find that even when the app they want is technically available, like Photoshop or Microsoft Word, it's not the full-featured version they were expecting. This so-called app gap ultimately killed Microsoft's mobile efforts a decade ago, and it's entirely possible the same issue could undo Google's upcoming desktop plans as well. Does anyone besides Google really want there to be a third desktop platform? I mean, what's the unique selling point here of an Android laptop? Seamless integration with your Android phone and watch could be one, but then the current Chrome OS has that covered pretty well already, and Link to Windows gives you a lot of cross-device functionality with Microsoft-flavored computers on top of that. If you look at the strength of the Windows world, it's about choice of hardware and plenty of variety across different price points. Plus, you can build your own custom rig that's tailor-made to you if you're a bit more technical. And Windows, of course, benefits from decades of legacy app support. On the Mac side, it's all about polish and performance per watt, in addition to the ecosystem and Apple's unparalleled aftermarket support. What does Google have to offer in this space that isn't already covered by the two main incumbents? What will it actually do that's any better that'll stop it getting squeezed out of the market after the first couple quarters of bad sales? That exact problem was a big part of what ultimately did for Windows Phone a decade ago, so what's Google's solution here? In some ways, Google is its own worst enemy. We already touched on the many occupants of the Google hardware graveyard in the intro, but it bears mentioning again. Google's lack of perseverance with new projects is a real concern for everyone involved, device makers, consumers, and app developers. Take the recent news that no future Pixel tablet is currently in development, for example. And in fact, just look at Google's on-again, off-again relationship with the tablet market over the past 14 years. The company was caught on the hop by the iPad in 2010 and never really managed to turn Android into a first-class competitor to Apple's tablet. It's impossible to know how serious Google actually is about Android laptops before we see any hardware or software. You'd hope, given the major platform status of Chrome OS and that it's being subsumed into Android, that it is pretty serious. But let's not misunderstand the competitive market forces that Google and its new products will be up against, which are entirely separate on top of the technical challenges we've already talked about. Both Apple and Microsoft will be doing everything in their power to ensure Android's latest foray into a new product category is a failure. The employment of dirty tricks is not guaranteed, but certainly is a possibility. Expect Microsoft to keep Office on Android as a second-class citizen, just as Google refused to support Windows Phone with its apps back in the day. It's an uphill challenge, and right now it's not clear if Google has the staying power to meet it. The technology is one thing, and I think Google probably has that mostly down. But in terms of market forces and staying power, if I had to bet one way or the other, I don't know that I'd necessarily bet on the success of Android-based laptops over the next few years. But what do you think? Is this the start of a new glory age for Android where the OS can live across every surface you touch? Or will market forces and technical gremlins conspire to make Android PCs just another failed Google endeavor? Share your thoughts down in the comments, don't forget to subscribe for more Android and PC coverage coming very soon. But in the meantime, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.